Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I want to let everyone know that we are here with Shelley Chard and Mike Fina, and Mike in a minute will take over the moderation and introduce each other. A couple of housekeeping things. You can talk amongst yourselves in the chat, but if you have a specific question for one of our panelists, please post it in the Q&A. And the panelists will be able to see those Q&A questions, and they'll be able to answer them there when we get to the Q&A section. So please do that. Questions in Q&A, chat to let us know you're here and how you're doing in the chat section. I wanted to let our affiliates who are listening, or our GAC registrants who are listening, we are finally able to get back into the ODOT warehouse to sort the second wave of supplies, and those will be delivered soon, probably within the next week or 10 days. And so be pleased watching for an email from Miranda Patton, our projects coordinator. Also, remember, if you do hold an event, to follow the guidelines for your local area on being in groups and how many can be in your group. If you have a really large group and you want to send them out in smaller groups, just have each group have a leader, and the leader explain the precautions that they're to take during that cleanup. And if you have any questions, just give us a call here at the office. The Keep America Beautiful, along with KOB, we will be issuing some kind of guidelines about how to re-engage volunteers and what to do at cleanups and things like that. KAB expects that to come out in the next week or two. So as soon as they give it to us and we add anything that might be different for Oklahoma, we'll get that out to all of our affiliates and partnering communities. So thank you again so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Fina, the director of the Oklahoma Municipal League.
Thanks, Jeanette. It's really exciting to be back. We did this a couple of weeks ago, and I really had a great time. I hope you guys did too. So if you're back here again, we just had a really robust and fun conversation. I'm doing more and more of these. In fact, this is my third Zoom meeting today, and I want to tell you a funny story. As I was talking to the OML board, and evidently I wasn't paying attention, and my foot hit the little lever on my chair, and so I just slowly started sinking on the camera. So if that happens, I'm not shrinking. No one threw water on me. I just hit the deal on my deal. So, but I'm going to try and avoid that for this. But again, it's great to be back. Things are changing so quickly with the virus. And it's dramatic just what has happened in 2 weeks since we talked the last time, and the changes for the state, for municipalities. We've really come into a new evolution of where we are as a state. We were pretty much in lockdown 2 weeks ago when we talked. And now we're starting to slowly open things back up. And it's been quite an adventure for municipalities and the state alike, just trying to figure out what that new normal is. And we had this discussion this morning with the OML board. I think there's a lot of great things about opening up government again and get the economy rolling. We need to be thinking about how that works. Some of the things that are concerning me right now, and we've talked about this actually a lot over the last week, is that the general public, some in the general public, I think, feel like, okay, things are open, we're back to normal, we can just start operating like we were before. And that it could be potentially very problematic for our state and our municipalities if people aren't still respecting these health directives. The fear is that if we were to have a relapse at this point, it would be worse than the first go around, and our economy might not recover for quite a while. So what we're encouraging all of our municipalities, and I'm encouraging all of you as community leaders, is that we have to continue to remind folks that we have to respect these healthcare directives, I know not, you're hearing a lot of stories about cities that are revoking their mask rules because of problems. Stillwater had just a horrific thing happen up there, and they pulled back on their mask rules. But those were their ordinances. We can still still encourage the social distancing, and it's really incumbent on the community leaders to make sure that people are following that. And it's just so we can get through this and get to the other side. So I'm encouraging all of you the same way I did the Oklahoma Municipal League Board this morning, that, hey, let's step up and let's make sure that people are following this to protect the public and protect our future. So some of the big things that have happened in municipal government, obviously, when we started opening, we had some cities that were opening on April 24th. Other cities waited till May 1st. There was some confusion in that first week because of the different times that people were opening. But now, for the most part, all of our large cities have reopened to some extent with a lot of restrictions. I'm really excited about our panelists today. At 2:30, Brent Kisling from the Department of Commerce is going on. And I don't want to take anything away from what he's going to say, but the Department of Commerce has been doing a really incredible job setting out the guidelines for businesses and giving direction to the state. So I know that Brent will talk about that more at 2:30. So and then our first panelist that will lead the day off is Shelley Chard. She is the Water Quality Division Director at DEQ. This is actually the first day that I've met Shelley, and I learned some interesting things about her before we started. She has actually been at DEQ since its inception in 1993, and she's been the director of the Water Quality Division since 2010. And she has advanced degrees in chemical engineering and biotechnology. So I joked with her and told her that everybody has that. That's nothing special. No, that's actually quite impressive. So, and the fact that she has spent her whole career at DEQ is also impressive and shows her dedication to the state. So I think that's enough for me. And I'd like to, at this time, invite Shelley to talk to the group.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike and Jeanette. I'm so happy to be able to be here with you guys and talk to your audience. So I thought I would kind of start with, we're living in strange times. That's not a news flash for anybody. That's definitely something that we all would agree is happening right now. And we do have some things from the state agencies that I want to share. And then I want to talk specifically about what it means to open your business if you've been closed for these last few weeks. So first of all, DEQ, like other environmental agencies in Oklahoma and across the country, had to make changes to our day-to-day operations. That's not a surprise, I'm sure. But we did some things that may not be quite as noticeable to the outside world. Obviously, we're doing a whole lot more teleworking. We're doing a lot of kind of remote review of records as opposed to being out at facilities. We have extended deadlines for enforcement actions where a municipality or an industry had a deadline, let's call it May 1st. We've made the decision that we would extend those deadlines for at least 60 days. And then we have the ability to review that depending on what happens in the governor's orders and the various cities and counties in their processes and any restrictions they may have. We don't want to be in a situation where we're holding someone responsible for things they can't control, like having a contractor on site or being able to order and obtain equipment or things that they need. So we have extended those deadlines. We've added some flexibility on sample locations, which is important for those industries and municipalities, and really all of us in protecting our health and making sure our water is safe that we're using to wash our hands, 10,000 times a day at least, or at least it feels like to me. So, we have allowed cities to say, I can't take this sample at this location because we don't want to enter someone's home, because there's some other issue. So we have worked with the Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C., and in Region 6 in Dallas, and been able to be flexible and allow those systems to stay in compliance. We've also been able to invoke what's called enforcement discretion, where we work with systems that may experience noncompliance, but again, is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The lab wasn't able to analyze their samples. Ordinarily, failing to monitor and report would result in a notice of violation and potentially an order or a fine. We're able to review that on a case-by-case basis. Another area where we spent some time is working with our operators, who are the ones actually, they don't get mentioned as first responders, but they're keeping the water plants and the wastewater plants functioning during this time. And what I try to tell them is they're not first responders, they're continuous responders. They're the always responders. So for those of you, shameless plug, if you're out on Facebook, grab a frame for your Facebook page that DEQ put out there, and it's thank a water and wastewater operator because they keep the water flowing. So that's a good way to recognize their hard work. And we've worked with them on how to get their continuing education and how to extend some deadlines. Now, that's kind of what's been happening at DEQ while our doors have been closed and nobody can come in and see us. We're hoping in the very near future to move to where we will have about 20 to 25% of our staff in the office on any given day, where you can make appointments to come review records or to pick up documents, pay fees, enroll for testing. So we're starting to move to that how do we reopen phase. And I know that's something that's really important to all of our businesses. People forget sometimes the role that certain agencies play in economic development. We're the environmental agency and we're enforcement driven and we're throwing up roadblocks. Well, that's not really what our primary role is. That's just the bad part of it that you hear about. We also work very closely with cities and industries on economic development. You have to have certain permits in order to operate. We have some of the shortest timelines across the country in helping our businesses able to expand or even relocate. One of the things that sometimes also that's forgotten is we are a public health agency as well, since we address public water supply program in Oklahoma, EPA on the national level, DEQ in Oklahoma. And for drinking water, you turn the tap on, water comes out. Nobody notices until you turn it on and it doesn't come out, or it's the wrong color, or it smells funny, or there's some other problem. So that's one of the things that we thought was really important, and we've got out all of our COVID-19 information on our website, but specifically for opening buildings that have been closed for an extended period of time, or these last month or 6 or 8 weeks, water can get stagnant. It sits in the building plumbing all of this time, and it may be used 1/10 of what its normal usage, or maybe hasn't been turned on at all for days and days at a time. So it's really important that as a business or a big office building opens up, that people spend a little bit of time and go in and turn on the cold water on all of the various faucets. Let it run for a few minutes. And then turn that off, turn the hot water on, let it run for a few minutes, let it come up to temperature and run and flush that stagnant water. You want to get that hot water cleared from the hot water tank all the way through the plumbing. You want your cold water to totally flush your lines because we don't want any bacteria growing, and that could create a whole nother round of illness that's not directly COVID-19, but it is potentially a harmful bacteria that can grow in that building's plumbing because there hasn't been water movement. We don't see that on a day-to-day operation of a building because there's adequate chlorine coming in or chloramines, whatever the disinfectant method is the system is using. And under ordinary circumstances, that carries through from the time it leaves the water plant all the way through to your building or your home. During this time where we've had a lot of stagnant water in buildings, we want to make sure to flush out that old water and bring in that good, treated, disinfected water so that we continue to wash our hands and protect ourselves and our loved ones, our customers, our clients. So that's a critical step. Even in our agency, even though we've had people in the building continuously, it's been a very reduced number. We've been going through that same process as well. And really, if you do it once or twice, you've got it covered unless you sit stagnant again for an extended period of time. Hopefully, we won't find ourselves in that situation, that we'll kind of be smart and do the things that Mike talked about and wear those masks and protect one another. One last area that I want to cover fairly quickly, just to let you know what's happening as we move forward at DEQ. We are starting our back in the office. I'm going to call it back to normal, recognizing this, I don't know what normal is anymore. We will start having more employees back in the building. We will be able to conduct a little more in-person business. I think we're going to continue to rely pretty heavily on things like Teams or Zoom or WebEx, some of these other technologies as we meet with facilities and talk about projects. We will be transitioning back into doing some inspections fairly soon being relative. We will be looking at what it means to do an inspection that historically has just been very routine. Going out and meeting with facilities frequently, we would just go and show up and we'd all have a chat and look at records, walk around the plant. Well, I'm not sure it's going to look like that anymore. We're still going to have to go and do those inspections. We have federal requirements that we have to meet. So we're starting to see, how do we do that in a safe manner? Some of our inspections, we are going out and we're looking at records. Well, maybe we can do some of that remotely. These are the records we need to see. How can we do that? In some cases where we've had bacteria positive in drinking water samples, we typically will have somebody go out and look at the sample site, walk through sampling with the operator, and verify that they're doing it all correctly. Well, we've already kind of transitioned on some of those emergencies by doing it through FaceTime and other video chats. So our technical assistance provider, our engineer, our environmental specialist, were at a safe distance, maybe several miles or in Oklahoma City, and can still see the process, the sampling, the containers, and we're able to make some recommendations on how to adjust that process so that they were able to collect samples properly and get that to the lab and analyze and avoid a boil order. So we're going to see more of that. We're looking at what several other states have done and trying to design what our new process might look like. rather than surprise inspections, we may do 24-hour notice or something so that we can put in place the right people to be available by phone, limited interaction in person. So we know we're going to see those changes, and we're going to be developing those policies with some consistency across the entire agency. And then also in our individual programs, we'll have to design those to target those areas that we're required to review. So that's still evolving, but you are going to start seeing DEQ people back out in the field. It's just going to look and feel a little different. Even in our office, we're going with masks or face shields required, limiting break rooms. Our big break room that you could have maybe 75 people sit are now, we have about 4 or 5 tables, 1 chair at a table. And as someone said, kind of reminds me of detention. So apparently we're reverting back to our middle school and high school days. So it's definitely a new world, but DEQ is definitely here to help. We're doing our part. And if you have any questions about drinking water, wastewater, operator certification and training, by all means, you can reach out to me. All DEQ programs have websites. We have dedicated page that's on COVID-19, our response, all the changes that affect various programs or individuals. So it's all out there. The water flushing for buildings, that's up on our website, and it also contains links to CDC and other national experts, the American Water Works Association, to provide any guidance anyone might need. So with that, I think I will stop. And I don't know if we have time for questions now, Mike, or how we should do that.
Yeah, we do. Let me, a couple of things that you talked about, I want to expand on. What we're going to see in I like how you said the new normal. We don't know. I like using that term. We don't know what that is yet, but we're figuring it out. But one of the things that we're going to see in the post-virus Oklahoma is a lot of opportunity for economic development and infrastructure projects. We keep hearing different numbers that are coming out of Washington, D.C. on potential infrastructure programs. And if any of you guys that were involved in state government or municipal government, or just pay attention to community 10 years ago when we passed a similar stimulus package, American Recovery Act, I believe is what it was called. There was millions of dollars in infrastructure projects that flowed into the state. I was mayor at the time, and we had several $1 million in little old Piedmont out there. And I believe that's going to happen again. But one of the interesting things in DEQ, I don't think that's the first thing that comes to mind, but DEQ plays a critical role in those infrastructure projects and moving them quickly. They were invaluable to us to get especially our wastewater projects, but you're going to see a lot more of that. And I want to give DEQ some props here. I had no problems with DEQ, even though I do like to tell this story when I'm talking to people from DEQ. I was elected mayor, and I don't know, I was sworn in 30 days later. And I remember on a Monday night, and then on Tuesday morning, I got a certified letter from DEQ letting us know that we were under consent order for our lagoon. So I was like, well, thanks DEQ for welcoming me to be mayor. But that was bad. But then what happened after was pretty good, because DEQ really worked with us and worked through the problem. We were never fined. They do threaten you, but they never find us. They just worked with us, and I see that still today.
Don't give up my secrets, Mike.
You gotta carry a stick, and then use the carry. So, but no, DEQ has been fantastic, and I will tell you from being at OML, there's been several occasions where we've had cities that were working on either projects that are in consent orders, or they're working on economic development projects. and DQ has been so responsive to all of those things every time we've called. So I just appreciate how you guys operate over there, and everybody should know how important you are in these projects. So
I appreciate that very much.
so okay, let's we do have some questions here as we wait for Brent. I think this is one you and I can probably come at from different angles. But one of our viewers said, how are regulatory agencies and municipalities dealing with inspections? I think you touched on that a little bit. Is there anything more you want to?
Yeah, so for the last 5-6 weeks, we have been doing primarily emergency response type inspections. We have not done much in the way of routine inspections. We had a couple of things that kind of lingered a little bit longer that we, had to do a final inspection, either on a major construction project that we wanted to be able to pay out a loan installment. We've also, where we've had E. coli positive samples for drinking water, we've had to go out to make sure we get those issues resolved because we want everybody to have safe drinking water. We are just now starting to look at the new normal inspections, and that we hope to have kind of, I don't want to call it finalized because I don't think anything's going to be finalized. I think it's going to be a constantly changing situation, just like everything with this pandemic has been. But we will have kind of some draft guidelines or policies. Our goal is toward the end of this week or next week, and those will be things that we will share with OML, Rural Water, and the Environmental Federation of Oklahoma, and it'll also, be widely available so that everybody knows exactly what we're doing.
From a municipal standpoint, I've heard a lot of different things that our cities are doing. Mostly it's precaution, the ones that are out doing inspections again, and most cities are. A lot of the inspections didn't slow down through the COVID, at least the initial, maybe the initial first couple of weeks, but then things had to get inspected because there's a lot of time frames that our municipalities meet. Now, I have heard that cities are using a lot more precaution, using protective equipment, establishing social too. But you'd said that you guys are that the surprise inspections, it's just it's not really that smart right now for municipalities. So I've heard that some have suspended those kind of inspections. Now I'm going to use this as a little bit of a segue into something good that happened at the legislatures. If you guys didn't know this, the legislature went back in session this week, and they're trying to get to the end of this, and I think primarily they're trying to get their budget done, but there are a few policy bills that they are taking up. One of the ones that was really critical to municipal government was something they did yesterday in special session, and that was renewing the Critical Health Emergency Act, giving the governor authority in times of emergency. Why that was so important for municipalities was that there's a provision in there that allows for our first responders to be notified if they're about to go into a premises that had a COVID-19 positive test. And it's really helped our first responders. So that's something that we were really advocating with the governor's office, that they continue and with the legislature, that they renew that, and that the governor continues that in his orders. So that did happen yesterday, so we're pretty excited, and that actually helps our inspectors that are out on the street as well. So Shelley, are you still there?
I am.
Okay.
I'm here.
Also, I just realized and noticed that Director Kisling has joined us on the attendee side. So,
can you make him a panelist?
I am going to do that.
We learned that at the beginning of this meeting, didn't we? We had some technical issues. There he is.
Well, I like that picture. Hi, Brent.
Hey, well, that was, you know what? That was just perfect timing.
Good.
Yeah, it's perfect because Shelley and I had done our tap dance routine about as far as we could take it, and we needed you to come in and finish the show. So I think I already kind of introduced you at the beginning of it. So I'll just say that I'm so excited that the executive director of the Department of Commerce could join us today. Brent and I are probably getting tired of seeing each other like this because we're on about a dozen committees together and we keep having these meetings. So, but he is far more in the know of what's going on at the state than I am. So, Brent, I think covering the funding stuff that we've been talking about, and just and I gave a lot of props to Commerce on all the work you guys have done on the guidelines. So some maybe a little bit about that, but you kind of have the floor. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mike. And I will tell you, any success that we have had is because of Mike Fina and the Oklahoma Municipal League. So I wake up every day and say, what can I do for cities today? That's my first thought. No, Mike is a good friend, has been for a long time, and really appreciate his willingness to serve on the governor's bounce back task force. I hope he spoke about that a little bit. I may mention it here in just a moment as well, but that is significant. A little bit of a history. I'm going to tell you where we're at today and some of the things that are going on, and would really love all of your input if at all possible. But on, I think it was March 11th, I need to go back and look at the date of that Utah Jazz game that was happening with the Thunder in downtown Oklahoma City. I was actually with the governor that evening. We were hosting a couple of companies from Enid that were in town. We always host companies at Thunder games in order to say thank you to them. And that was the night that he got the phone call from the health department saying that one of the Jazz players had COVID, and the whole world changed after that night. But things happened very rapidly in Oklahoma, and our numbers continue to go up, as did it in several other states. And the thing that you got to do first is get your arms around something like this. There wasn't a cure for it. There wasn't a vaccine. And so the governor went in and closed some NAICS codes of businesses in the state. And during this whole process, just about every manufacturer was considered open and essential. And really just about every retailer was considered essential and open. The ones that were closed, there were about 6% of the total NAICS codes in Oklahoma that were closed because it was going to be very difficult to do social distancing with those particular businesses. So those were things like barbershops, which I don't go to a lot of barbershops, shockingly. Other salons, places where you get your nails done, bowling alleys, pet groomers, that kind of thing, where it's very much a social interaction with the customer. And we did the closing a little bit different than most other states in that we assigned that directly to a NAICS code. And whenever you're a business owner and you file your taxes or you supply information to the census, you have to have a 4-digit, or I mean, it can go all the way up to a pretty long NAICS code that describes what kind of business you have. And we tied every closure directly to the NAICS code so that there wouldn't be any kind of confusion on it. And fortunately, we were able to work with Mr. Fina and the Municipal League because most of the enforcement of that happened on the local level. And we wanted to make it as clear as possible for those local law enforcement folks who we interacted with every day, Department of Commerce. Every day we had folks working with local police departments to identify whether they were in the governor's executive order or not. And it was a little rocky at the beginning. I will completely confess to that. Nobody had ever done anything like this before. But after about 4 days, I feel like we were able to get our arms around it and give very clear direction to the communities all across the state of Oklahoma. But the purpose for closing those were not necessarily to stop the spread of the virus. It was to allow us to catch up on personal protective equipment, ICU beds, ventilators, those types of things in the state, and make sure that if we did have a huge number of folks that went to the hospital, that we had the supplies to handle that. And that worked magically. We actually peaked on hospital beds being used for COVID on March the 30th with 565 beds being used, hospital beds. Today, that number is about 230. So we've gone from 560 on March 30th down to 230 today. We have way more than 1,000 ventilators that are available today. We have several weeks worth of personal protective equipment that's on board. And I'll talk about that again here in just a moment. But what happened in March worked for us in Oklahoma. It's not necessarily worked the same way in every state. And so that's why the governor has really focused on our numbers and looking at our data to figure out when we would reopen. But one thing that we did at Commerce way early, and this leads to where I'm heading with my story, is we needed to get personal protective equipment. We needed to get masks. We needed to get gowns for the folks in hospitals, and all the gloves, all those types of hand sanitizer. We really had to ramp up for that. And the Department of Health really wasn't positioned to work with manufacturers in that way, but the Department of Commerce was. And so we created a portal on our website. We didn't publicize it a whole lot. We publicized it to manufacturers in Oklahoma. And we said, hey, if you're willing to go in and start making some of these products, then we'll help you get your state vendor code ready. We will help you to get connected to the health department. And we were overwhelmed. We had 150 some manufacturers in Oklahoma that approached us, and we worked with them to get their products sold to Oklahoma Health Department. So the beautiful thing is, as we ramped up, we were buying our own products. I mean, we had to buy some out of state, but for the most part, we were able to buy our own because we had those relationships with manufacturers. Well, what has happened here in the last couple of weeks, now that we've got the supplies, not necessarily that we need, but that would be acceptable for us as a state to handle any kind of spike that might be coming in positive cases. We've switched it to an online directory that anybody can use. And this is important because as of April 24th, we started reopening salons and those types of things within our local economy. And again, everybody's buying masks. Everybody's buying hand sanitizer. You see it if you're going anywhere to buy anything right now. You're seeing these products being utilized. And again, we wanted to make sure we keep those dollars in Oklahoma. So we have a PPE directory. It's on the okcommerce.gov. okcommerce.gov website. If any of you know of anybody that's needing it on the local level, please let us know. Contact or go to that website and we can connect you. Another thing that we recognized through this process was that some of these companies wanted to pivot and start making these products, but they were risk averse and didn't necessarily want to invest the money in something demand that we might not need here in another 6 to 8 months. And so we created what we called the Oklahoma Manufacturing Reboot Program. And we took some of the governor's quick action closing fund, $5 million actually, and put it toward awards for Oklahoma manufacturers. We made 37 of those awards last week and have helped them to purchase equipment and to create this market for PPE here in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, we had 350 applications. So we had a lot of manufacturers that wanted to do it, but we just didn't have enough funding to fund all of them. So we created a new program called the Bounce Back Assistance Program. I won't go into the details unless anybody has questions on it, but it's basically a program where we can take a portion of your withholding taxes, put that toward a bond that's released on the state level, and return those dollars to you every month in order to help you develop a new product. And it doesn't necessarily have to be medical products. If it's something else in this new economy that would help us hire Oklahoma citizens, then we're for that also. But that we're taking applications on that right now. The awards on that they're grants. You don't get it all up front. You get it every month for 6 to 8 months. But we're taking applications on that until Friday of this week. And so I would really encourage any of you out there that knows of manufacturers in your area. By the way, I'm a huge fan of Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. I used to be the local economic development director in Enid, and our folks in Enid, especially our Main Street program and Kelly Tompkins and what they did, I know there was a close relationship there. So what you're doing is fantastic. So anyway, that's some of the funding. Now, 2 other things quickly, and then I don't know, Mike, if we've got opportunity to answer any questions, but I would certainly love to answer questions. Actually, 3 things. Everybody is familiar with the CARES Act, and there were two particular programs on the federal level that they put money into. There's a bunch of them that fit into different buckets, like there's a broadband program, and there's programs just for agricultural producers, and some it's several different, but there's two main ones that we've been accessing in Oklahoma. One is called the EIDLE program, that stands for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program through SBA. That was the first program that they put out on the street. It existed well before COVID ever was a twinkle in its parent's eye, but it has existed for a long time, and it had $17 million available in it, and I think they had $40 million worth of requests the first day, so it was oversubscribed pretty quickly. They added some additional money to it, but they have not reopened that to applications recently. It's a 30-year working capital loan that any businesses can apply for. But then they doubled down and created what they call the Payroll Protection Program, and this is delivered through our local banks. And they put $349 million into that in the first tranche. That was gone in about a week and a half. And so they added another $340 million to it. And from what I understand, there's only about a third of those dollars that have gone out so far. That is for businesses and nonprofits, not 501c6s. I don't know how many KOBs are 501c6s, but for most of the other nonprofits, they're available. I hope everybody has pursued that could. But it's delivered through the local bank, and it is you apply basically estimating your monthly payroll. They give you 2.5 times that monthly payroll, so basically 8 weeks plus a little extra that you can put toward paying your folks to come back to work. Great program, very easily delivered. It's delivered through the banks with the guaranteed loan, and I would encourage you to apply for that. If for some reason you need assistance, or any of your partners out there need assistance through PPP program or the EIDLE program, we have found that if you call the SBA helpline, 1-800-HELP-ME-APPLY for SBA, you are probably going to be on hold for 5 to 6 hours. So you better charge your phone beforehand. What we decided to do at Commerce is we turned about 20 of our staff members over to doing SBA assistance. And so we trained them on the programs, how you apply, how do you answer this question, what line do you use off your tax return in order to submit that information. And again, you can go to okcommerce.gov. If you've got any questions whatsoever, you can call into Commerce, and we have yet to have somebody that it took us an hour to get back to them after they left us a message. Normally you're going to get a live person immediately, and today I've seen them here at the office. They're here, they're ready to help you in any way. Because of that, so far in the payroll protection program, we have been number 7 in the nation in the percent of our payroll that is covered through that program. I believe we've done a fantastic job of getting the word out and making sure our businesses are signed up. The other thing we're doing is trying to make sure we keep those communication lines open. And actually, one of the reasons why I was a little bit late coming on today is on Wednesdays, we do 4 industry roundtable calls with Secretary Copeland, our Secretary of Commerce and Workforce Development. At 9 o'clock in the morning, we do a call with manufacturers. This morning, we had about 200 manufacturers that were on the call. At 1 o'clock, we do a call with economic development organizations and nonprofits. I would encourage all of you to participate on that call if you wish to. We had, 250 or so on that call today. At 2 o'clock, we visit with our service sectors. So that's where we talk with banks, attorneys' offices, accountants' offices, anybody who provides services in our economy. We just finished that one up a little bit ago. And then coming up here at 3 o'clock, we will do a phone call with all of our retailers. And that's normally a pretty big call. There'll be hundreds of our retailers on there. And we go through all of the numbers as of this week. We talk about any new programs that we're hearing coming out of Washington, D.C., or anything new that we have happening here in Oklahoma, and make sure that you've got the latest information possible. And then, and then the last thing is each state through the CARES Act was given a certain amount of money for reimbursement of COVID-related expenses. In Oklahoma, we got $1.5 billion for COVID-related expenses. Some of those dollars went are to go to government. Well, let me step back. There are really 3 or 4 purposes for the money. They can go to state government reimbursement of expenses. They can go to city or county reimbursement of expenses. They can go to economic development related expenses, business assistance reimbursement, or to health or safety related expenses. Like I say, in Oklahoma, we got 1.5 billion. They did put a direction in there from the U.S. Treasury that if you are a government representing more than 500,000 people, then you get a direct allocation. And so in Oklahoma, Oklahoma City received a direct allocation, Oklahoma County received a direct allocation, so did Tulsa County. If you take that money out, that was about $250,000, so you end up with $1.25 billion that's still available for reimbursement here in the state. Of that, 45% is to go to local forms of government, cities and counties. We've been working very closely with Mr. Fina on what that would actually look like. The other 55% goes to the state level and with business assistance. And we have a state finance team that's been working through that right now. I will tell you, a press release is supposed to go out sometime today. I haven't seen it yet, and I didn't get to watch the governor's press conference a while ago, but some of those state dollars have gone to a ramp up at OESC, or Oklahoma Employment Securities Commission. They are, as you know, they are overwhelmed. In the first 3 weeks of this pandemic, they got more requests than all of last year put together. Robin Robertson is our brand new director. She's been on board 2 months on the job over at OASC and is doing a great job. She's a high-tech entrepreneur, and so this is a world that she knows how to exist in. But they used to have 11 people in their call center, and now they have over 500 in order to help answer people's questions about unemployment insurance. They're dealing with fraud right now because we're trying to get dollars out the door as quickly as we can, but you also need to be verifying folks. And that's the bad thing about an emergency is people step up with bad intentions sometimes and mess it up for everybody. But some of these 1.25 million on the state side, billion, is going to help with that call center. Some is helping with the deployment of the National Guard to our long-term care facilities in Oklahoma. If you've heard at all about what the governor has been talking about, 42% of the deaths that we have had in Oklahoma have happened at long-term care facilities such as nursing homes. Only 16% of our nursing homes have actually had a positive case, but that's where a lot of the deaths have actually happened. And so in order to combat that, we've deployed the National Guard to go out and do sanitation on all of our nursing homes in Oklahoma. So some of the expenses have gone that way. And then also just a ramp up in temporary staff at the health department. You might have read recently that one of the big things we have to do is if somebody tests positive, then we need to go in and see and trace where they have been, who have they been in contact with the last couple of weeks, and make sure those folks are contacted, and we do testing on them as well. And so that takes a lot of staff and a lot of cooperation across several agencies. But beyond those expenses that have already gone out the door, now we're trying to figure out what first of all, how do we reimburse state agencies, and then is there an economic assistance part of this that we could put together in order to make a long-term impact for Oklahoma? And I met with the governor just this morning to talk about some of these things, and he is passionate about the fact that no matter what we do, we need to make sure that it's something that will have an impact on Oklahoma well beyond just the emergency time of this pandemic. And think of it this way: think of could we do low interest loans to businesses rather than grants, so that those dollars would come back in and we could utilize them in a revolving loan fund? Is there a way to help local tourism venues, which many of you may be very much involved with. Is there a way to help them, maybe in the short term with some kind of financial assistance, but more importantly, could we do a marketing campaign that would bring more people driving to Oklahoma? I think the next 6-8 months, that's what vacations are going to look like, or people are going to get in the car and drive. So can we be doing some marketing in Dallas and Kansas City and Denver to get people to drive through Oklahoma, see some of our assets, spend their money here, and we create a long-term customer rather than just dollars that would go to short-term expenses. So those are some of the thought processes that we're going through. Mike, I don't know whether I covered anything that you wanted me to cover too, but those are the things that are front and center for me.
No, that was incredible. Oh, one of the things if you want to touch on that, you had mentioned a little bit that we were serving on that bounce back committee for the governor, which has been interesting the last few weeks that we've been on there. The first week was pretty stressful because we were helping to figure out there was a lot of debates and even directly with the governor, but we've kind of evolved in the last couple of weeks after things calmed down. And I don't know how I feel like you and I are having this conversation, but I think it'd be interesting for you to hear. This week it really turned because we redirected our focus to this, what does post-virus Oklahoma look like, and what is the state's role and municipalities' roles. And it was a much more fun conversation, and I think you touched on a lot of the things that we're working on with what you just said. But anything else you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. Well, and the first couple of meetings, just for everybody's knowledge, we first met before the state had any reopen plan. It was on that Monday. I think the governor did a press conference on Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, it was Wednesday.
Yep.
So we went from Monday with our first meeting talking about reopening and brainstorming on ideas to us actually publicizing the plan on Wednesday and implemented on Friday, that April 24th day, whenever the first thing started to reopen. So it was fast and furious and very stressful for those first couple of days. And one thing that the governor another thing that the governor's been very passionate about is this idea that closing businesses is not necessarily what slows down the virus. I mean, it did immediately because we didn't know what we were dealing with, but having a boutique women's clothing store closed, that's not what stops the virus. It's the social distancing. It's whether you can keep customers 6 feet away from each other, whether you can use masks, whether you can use plastic barriers. And the cool thing about Oklahoma, and this is true of our state, even beyond the pandemic, is we're very innovative here. And I live up in Enid, and I've been out shopping quite a bit. And I will tell you, it's fascinating to see the way these local retailers are implementing social distancing guidelines. So that's why the governor wanted to make sure that we get things reopened as quickly as possible. And part of our meeting this morning was about our pipeline of projects. We've had 12 projects. I don't know what the press is on here today, but we've had 12 projects just in the last 2 weeks out of California that have approached us, companies looking to move out of California and move to Oklahoma, just because of the way that we've handled the business community in our state versus what they experienced in California. Every decision that the governor was making or we made at Commerce fell into 3 categories. Was it important for public health? Was it important for economic health? And was it important for mental health? And each of those 3 went into all those decisions. And for some states, the economic and even the mental health side of it wasn't really part of the process. But that caused some of the consternation up front and some of the deep discussions. But now, as we look to the future, Mike knows this. We're looking at 4 different things. What is our messaging? What is the way that we share this with our public to make sure that there is consumer confidence, so that they'll leave their house and go spend money and feel comfortable doing so? What does our workforce look like? Right now, we've got over 15% unemployment. We were 3.2% unemployment 45 days ago. 15% unemployment today. How do we make sure that those folks go back to work? How do we work with some of them maybe to go back to a job that's higher paying than what they left before? So that's part of the discussion. Just general economic growth. Are there regulations we could look at that would help us catapult out of this more quickly, or specific incentive programs that would encourage businesses to climb out of this more quickly? And the last one is infrastructure and long-term planning. I think the thing that we've learned in Oklahoma beyond anything else is that we have lots of broadband deserts in Oklahoma. If you're trying to do distance learning with your students at home, with your local school, or you're trying to do telemedicine right now, or you're trying to just call in on Zoom calls, when you see that little buffering circle on your screen, you're thinking, why can't we have faster speeds in my area of the state? And we have, I think we've got some real opportunities right now to invest in that infrastructure. I think it's going to help us more long term.
That's great. Listen, you said you had a meeting at 3, so I don't want to make you late for that. But we do have one question. I don't know if you have the answer, if this might be where you direct to some of those experts that you've trained on the SBA. But since part-time employees' hours vary and they may not reach what the average was in 2019, does the payroll have to be exactly what you put in the payroll protection loan request, or can it be applied to other expenses, rent, etc.?
Cut out there for a second, but you were talking
about
temporary employees being added to the payroll protection program.
Well, said if your hours didn't reach what they averaged in 2019, I think what she's asking is the extra money, can that be applied to other expenses, rent, etc.?
Yeah, well, on the math that they do on the payroll protection program, it's 2.5% of your monthly payroll, and you can pay that for 8 weeks. So obviously there's an extra 0.5 in there beyond what you could do, and those dollars can obviously go toward rent and I think mortgage payments. There's a list. Again, you can go to okcommerce.gov and see all of those different expenses that you can add in there. But the big thing, and this is what they're going to be auditing on, I'm sure, with all of these hundreds of thousands of applications, is whether you've reached 75% of your money that you got through payroll protection going back to your employees and paying for your payroll. That's going to be a pretty easy thing for them to track, and we've been encouraging everybody who applies, make sure that we've been even encouraging people, maybe take the money and put it into a separate account, have some separate receipts that you may have to present at some point. Because at the end of 8 weeks, you write a letter to your bank that says, I've spent my 75% on payroll and I don't want to pay my money back. I want this forgiven. And if they come back and say, prove it, you need to have your receipts in hand.
And Lisa responded and said, thank you. You answered her question. So there we go. So we're going to run right up on 3. I know Jeanette wants to close this. I'm just going to thank Brent and Shelley for participating today. It was another really great discussion, and I know it was very helpful to everybody on the line. So thank you, guys. I'll turn over to Jeanette.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Shelley and Brent. And we appreciate you taking your time to be with us today and with all of our community partners. That really great discussion. Yeah, I'm just going to do some paperwork and talk to my people. So if you want to jump on your other call, I understand. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
And Mike too. I'm just going to do some house cleaning. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
And for our participants, just some house cleaning things. We skipped over my part about what we were going to be talking about on what that transition looks like, what are the bullet points of the general business guidelines in phase 1, and those type of things, because we knew that Director Kisling was going to talk about that and we didn't want to duplicate. So that is in a document form. It will be provided to you after this conversation, or sometime this afternoon or in the morning. It has a lot of those links that Director Kisling was talking about. You can find so much information on the COVID pages on both the Department of Health and at Commerce. So please go visit those sites. The other things I wanted to touch on again are my GAC registrants that may be listening. Supplies will be sorted soon and shipped out soon, so be watching for that email from Miranda. And any other questions? I'm here this week and next. The staff returns on May 18th, and we will be staggering office hours. We'll always have 2 people here. So, and like I've said to you before, your email, your voicemail translates to email, and we can get back with you just almost immediately during business hours. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.